Stop everything and listen. This is not a drill. The moment just hit where your economy, your job, your bills, and yes, your future are suddenly on the table. Mark Carney just dropped a bomb. The protections Canada relied on are gone. Side deals are dead. And the CUSMA rules that kept our industry safe are collapsing. Do you feel that? That's the tension of power replacing predictability. And it's coming for every worker, every family, every business. You need to know this now because what seems like a distant trade negotiation is already shaping your grocery prices, your paychecks, and the stability of your community. If you stick with me, I'll show you exactly how steel, aluminum, energy, dairy, and lumber have become bargaining chips, and why this moment is a wake-up call for every single one of us. Here's the truth. CUSMA rules are collapsing and power is replacing predictability. Let's break it down. CUSMA rules are collapsing. Power is replacing predictability. And you need to understand this right now because this is not an abstract policy shift. This is a structural rupture in how your economy works. For decades, the North American economy ran on rules that were boring by design. Boring meant stable. Stable meant jobs. Stable meant investment. Stable meant you could plan your life without wondering whether a political mood swing in another capital would erase your livelihood overnight. That era is ending in real time. What Mark Carney confirmed is that the rulebook no longer protects the players. The strongest actor at the table is rewriting the game as it's being played. And once rules stop being automatic, everything becomes negotiable. Prices, access, jobs, supply chains. This is not about diplomacy. This is about leverage. When trade agreements stop functioning as enforceable systems and start functioning as conditional favors, the entire economy shifts from cooperation to coercion. Businesses do not invest into coercion. Workers do not thrive under leverage. Markets do not grow under threats. And that's exactly what is happening now. The United States is no longer treating CUSMA as a shared framework. It's treating it as a pressure valve, something to tighten or loosen depending on political demands. That is a fundamental transformation. And once that door opens, it never quietly closes again. No side deals means steel, energy, and jobs are fully exposed. And this is the part that should make your stomach drop. Sectoral agreements were not bureaucratic trivia. They were armor. They were designed to fence the most critical industries, steel, aluminum, energy, lumber, and protect them from political chaos. They were lifeboats before the storm. Carney just confirmed those lifeboats are not launching. Everything is now being thrown into a single, volatile negotiation where nothing is protected and everything is tradable. That means steel workers are no longer shielded by industrial logic. Energy producers are no longer insulated by long-term demand. Aluminum workers are no longer protected by integrated supply chains. Their fate is now tied to dairy quotas, alcohol regulations, digital services, and political optics. That is not economics. That is hostage taking by structure. When one country refuses to compartmentalize negotiations, it is signaling one thing clearly: maximum leverage matters more than mutual benefit. This strategy works precisely because it creates fear. Fear delays investment, fear freezes hiring, fear forces concessions before tariffs ever appear. The damage begins long before any policy is signed. This collapse of predictability is not accidental. It is strategic. Predictable systems limit power, unpredictable systems concentrate it. When a dominant economy replaces rules with conditional extensions, it transforms trade into a permanent state of suspense. Every review becomes a cliff. Every deadline becomes a threat. Every negotiation becomes a test of endurance. That's why Carney's words landed so hard. He wasn't announcing a delay. He was acknowledging a shift in terrain. The assumption that rational economics would be separated from political brinkmanship is gone. Everything is now political. Everything is now transactional. And that means businesses can no longer plan on fundamentals alone. They must plan for volatility as a permanent condition. This is how economic erosion actually begins. Quietly, structurally, before the headlines catch up. A factory doesn't shut down the day a tariff is announced, it stops expanding months earlier. A builder doesn't cancel projects when lumber prices spike. They pause hiring when uncertainty lingers. A supplier doesn't relocate overnight. They stop reinvesting and wait. And when enough people wait, growth dies without ever crashing. That is the danger of losing rule-based trade. The economy doesn't explode. It slowly suffocates. That's why the absence of side deals matters more than any single concession. It removes the pressure, release valves. It forces every industry to compete for survival in one massive negotiation where the strongest player dictates timing and terms. And make no mistake, this is a power imbalance by design. The United States can afford uncertainty longer than Canada can. Larger markets always can. That asymmetry is now being exploited openly. When Washington refuses to lock in protections for steel or aluminum early, it preserves leverage over Canada's non-negotiables. That is not an oversight. That is strategy. It keeps Canadian negotiators permanently defensive, always calculating which sector might have to be sacrificed next. This is how power replaces rules, not with loud declarations, but with structural positioning. One side gains the ability to wait. The other side absorbs the cost of delay. What makes this moment especially dangerous is that it rewires expectations. Once industries internalize that no agreement is secure until everything is settled, they stop trusting agreements altogether. They shorten timelines, they avoid long-term commitments, they price in political risk. And that risk shows up everywhere. In wages, in consumer prices, in reduced competition. You pay for it, even if you never hear the word CUSMA again. This is how macro-level decisions land directly in your grocery bill, your rent, your job security, not through dramatic collapse, but through sustained uncertainty that drains momentum from the system. This exposure also reveals a deeper fracture. Trade is no longer being framed as shared prosperity. It is being framed as a contest of winners and losers. When that framing takes hold, compromise becomes weakness and cooperation becomes surrender. Side deals die in that environment because side deals require trust. Trust requires belief in mutual benefit, and that belief is eroding fast. What replaces it is transactional thinking. What can I extract? What can I withhold? What pressure point can I exploit next? That mindset spreads quickly. Once legitimized, provinces mirror it, states mirror it, industries mirror it soon. Everyone is playing defense instead of building capacity. This is why Carney's message matters far beyond this negotiation cycle. It signals that Canada is now operating inside a system where economic logic no longer guarantees protection. Efficiency no longer ensures access. Integration no longer ensures stability. Everything must now survive politics. And politics, by nature, rewards spectacle over systems, pressure over planning, and short-term wins over long-term resilience. That is not a neutral shift. It systematically disadvantages workers, small businesses, and consumers, the very people trade agreements were supposed to serve. Right now, steel, energy, and manufacturing are standing fully exposed. Not because they are weak, but because the system designed to protect them has been deliberately bypassed. That is the breaking news. The collapse is not theoretical, it is operational. And once power replaces predictability, rebuilding trust becomes exponentially harder. Because every future promise is discounted by the memory of this moment. Trade stability is now a political weapon, not an economic principle. And that shift is already reshaping the ground beneath your feet. When trade agreements stop acting like neutral rulebooks and start acting like leverage tools, every deadline becomes a threat and every review becomes a bargaining chip. Stability is no longer automatic. It is conditional on political compliance. That means access to markets, materials, and jobs can be tightened or released depending on pressure. not performance. Uncertainty freezes investment before tariffs ever hit. And this is the silent damage most people miss. Companies don't wait for penalties to arrive. They pause hiring, delay expansion, and shelve projects the moment predictability disappears. Capital hates suspense. Jobs vanish, not with announcements, but with hesitation. Canada's economy just lost its safety net, and the impact is immediate even if the headlines sound procedural. Without side agreements, no industry is insulated from political trade-offs, meaning every sector is now expendable in a single high-stakes negotiation. That exposure raises risk across the entire system, and risk slows everything. Dairy and alcohol are leverage tools, not trade details. And that reality exposes how far this dispute has moved from economics into power politics. Milk quotas and bourbon shelves are being used as pressure points to force concessions elsewhere, turning everyday goods into bargaining chips and consumers into collateral. Protectionism is spreading on both sides of the border, and that escalation is accelerating faster than policy can contain it. Each restriction invites retaliation. Each blockade justifies the next, and suddenly cooperation is replaced by economic trench warfare. This fade-up down doesn't require headings. The language of defense now dominates trade talks, framing every import as a threat and every export as a concession. Workers are hostages in a high-stakes negotiation, caught between governments trading access for advantage. Their jobs depend not on productivity or demand, but on political timing and leverage, leaving livelihoods exposed to decisions made far from the factory floor. CUSMA's review clause has become a cliff edge, transforming what was meant to be routine oversight into a recurring moment of economic peril. Instead of providing confidence, each review now threatens disruption, forcing governments and industries to negotiate under pressure with the risk of collapse always present. That instability feeds directly into the market. North America's economic operating system is breaking down as rules give way to leverage, and integration gives way to suspicion. Supply chains built over decades are now vulnerable to political shocks. And once an operating system starts failing, every user feels the slowdown at the same time. Listen, this is bigger than headlines. Rules are gone. Leverage is in charge. Your jobs, your industries, and your daily life are caught in the crossfire. Steel, energy, dairy, lumber, these aren't abstract numbers. They're the backbone of communities, of families, of livelihoods. If you thought trade was boring, you now see its survival. This is your wake-up call. Stay informed, stay alert, and understand that power now drives the system, not rules, not fairness. We've seen the stakes. We know the risks. The choice is clear. Awareness is your armor. Stand ready, question everything, and don't let uncertainty control your life. This is USA World Reports. We bring you the truth, and we give you the insight to act. Thank you for tuning in, but don't stop here. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this report. Stay informed, stay alert, stay ahead of the moves shaping your future, and join us next time as we uncover what's coming next in global trade. Because knowledge isn't optional, it's power.